In January 1976, a new sitcom made its debut. With its blend of nostalgia and screwball comedy, Laverne and Shirley was a critical flop, but a ratings winner. Lightweight? Sure it was. But it never pretended to be anything else. These girls just wanted to have fun. A generation after Lucy and Ethel, Ralph Cramden and Ed Norton, Laverne and Shirley brought slapstick back to television. Laverne and Shirley was born as a spin-off from a #1 sitcom, Happy Days. And it's no coincidence that the creator of both shows was Gary Marshall, big brother of Penny, who played Laverne. Penny started in show business at an early age.
My mother was a dancing school teacher in the basement of our building in the Bronx, so I had been tap dancing mainly since I was 3 years old, a precision tap dancer. We entertained everywhere, insane asylums, veterans hospitals, on television.
Long before she became a star, Penny worked as a supporting player on other sitcoms. Her big break came in 1971, when she landed a regular spot on The Odd Couple, which was produced by her brother Gary. As Myrna Turner, Oscar Madison's whiny secretary, Penny polished her skills.
My sister Penny trained 5 years on Odd Couple. She was on Odd Couple, learned her craft.
The other half of Laverne and Shirley, Cindy Williams, didn't have Penny's connections, but she found her own path to stardom.
I wanted to be a nurse, but I was terrible at physiology, and I fainted when our physiology teacher, Mrs. Katz, dissected a frog. And the only other thing that I was interested in at the time was acting.
Cindy studied acting in college, but turning her passion into a career wouldn't be easy.
They teach you how to act, and they teach you theater, but they don't teach you show business. So I became the next best thing, a waitress. And I waited tables at the House of Pancakes for many years.
Cindy wouldn't be a waitress for long.
No, no, Harold. It's not another man. It's a man.
Soon she was landing commercials, like this one for Foster Grant.
Face it, Harold. The only thing you ever gave me was a cold.
Commercials led to television and film roles.
Hello? Harold.
Then she got the call that would change her career.
My friend, Fred Roos, called and said, I'm casting this movie for this really hip, wonderful director, George Lucas, and I'd like you to come in and read for the ingenue. And at first I told him no. Boy, am I an idiot.
Fortunately, she reconsidered. The movie was American Graffiti, which paired Cindy on screen with Ron Howard. She followed up that success with a role in Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. Cindy had met Penny Marshall years earlier on the set of a film called The Christian Licorice Store. Though their parts ended up on the cutting room floor, their friendship would last. In 1975, Gary gave Penny and Cindy a guest shot on his hit TV series, Happy Days.
Laverne, this is Laverne DeFazio, she's mine. And this is Shirley Feeney, she's yours, as you can see.
I played with Henry, and she played with Ron. And we were nervous, is basically what it was. We were the fast girls, the slutty girls.
Gary said, you know, what if Fonzie set Richie up with inappropriate dates? He couldn't understand why Richie would be uncomfortable with girls who went to the ladies' room and beat the hell out of each other.
The Laverne and Shirley episode was memorable because, you know, we had some great scenes. It was very well written. It's really funny physical comedy. That was an episode that really just clicked.
The characters of Laverne and Shirley were intended simply as a one-shot deal, but Penny and Cindy had made quite an impression. Soon, ABC executives asked Gary Marshall to come up with a new show for the 8:30 slot, right after Happy Days, and Marshall knew just where to look.
And next thing I know, they were calling saying, hey, they want to do a spin-off. I said, what is a spin-off? Well, they want you to do your own show, you and Penny.
So for $8,000, we took the Happy Days set, and Gary wrote a couple of scenes, and we taped them there. It was lightning in a bottle. That they really were very funny. Everybody thought they were great. The magic was there.
It was just a 10-minute demo, but it was enough to convince network executives, and Laverne and Shirley was scheduled for a mid-season premiere. Cindy and Penny would play a couple of blue-collar working girls, bottle cappers at the Schatz Brewery in Milwaukee in the late 1950s. Best friends and roommates, they'd struggle every week to make ends meet and find Mr. Right. The two headliners would be supported by an entourage of assorted friends and relatives. Eddie Mecca was selected to play the closest thing the series would have to a romantic male lead, a charmer named Carmine Ragusa, nicknamed the Big Ragu.
I did a screen test with 100 Carmines running around, so I busted through that door and knocked the lamp over. I was so full of energy.
Phil Foster was cast as Laverne's dad, Frank DeFazio. Foster had made his name as a stand-up comic, later switching to movies and TV. Another veteran of stage and screen also joined the cast. Among her many other roles, Betty Garrett had played opposite Frank Sinatra in the classic musical On the Town. Now she would play Laverne and Shirley's landlady, Edna Babish.
With Laverne and Shirley, they let me choose my first name. They said, "What name do you want?" And I thought, Edna. I thought, that's a marvelous comedy name.
To balance the female leads, Laverne and Shirley needed two guys. Leonard Kozlowski and Andrew Squigman, alias Lenny and Squiggy, came crashing through the girls' front door every week.
What are you gonna do next? Sell them our garbage or other smelly leftovers? Huh?
Hello. David Lander and myself met while painting a chair at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. We just kind of got to talking and, had a lot of things in common, among which were these two characters that we wound up doing.
At the time, Lander and McKeon called their characters Lenny and Anthony.
People said, "It's a waste of time. Why do you keep doing those guys? You should be doing more serious things." And they were right, or at least we felt they were. But then we'd run off to a room and we'd still sneak them in,
In L.A., they got to know Penny Marshall and her husband, writer and actor Rob Reiner, then starring in All in the Family.
I had some people over, little fans of my brother, and they need very little prodding, David and Michael, to go into their character.
Rob said, "So you're going to do Lenny and..." Then there were Lenny and Anthony. You do Lenny and Anthony? And I said, "Sure." And we went into a bit we had never done before, nor have we ever done since. Everybody laughed.
I got some good laughs. There were some good laughers there, too. That's very important.
I got a call the next day saying, "Can you do those two guys?" It was Gary. It's my Gary impression. "Can you do those two guys? Maybe we'll hire you as apprentice writers," which means writers who get no credit and very little money. "And come, we'll show you how we do this, and maybe you can write those guys in."
Network executives thought the guys wrote funny material, but could they actually perform it on the air?
So funny and so obscene. I mean, these guys didn't go 4 consecutive words without saying the F word. I mean, but that was a very big part of what made them funny. Their utter disregard for decency.
The first question that Gary said is, "Can they be funny and clean?" And I remember thinking, I don't know.
With the additions of Lenny and Squiggy, the casting of Laverne and Shirley was nearly complete. David Lander and Michael McKeon had wowed Gary Marshall with their comic talents, but there was a lingering concern. Could they be funny and clean?
We knew you couldn't say certain things on television. We got tiptoed up to the line, mostly in the realm of toilet humor, which was still kind of something, Archie's toilet flushing off camera was about as, salty as it was at that time, 1976.
And their language wasn't the only problem. One of the characters' names would be changed, too, at the request of executive producer Gary Marshall.
Gary said, "Anthony's too Italian. We have too many Italians on the show." Well, we had no Germans on the show, and we took place in Milwaukee, which has a huge German population. So why don't we make him German? So Anthony Squigliano became Andy Squigman. Squiggy.
We changed him to Andrew Squigman, because apparently you're allowed to make fun of Germans. That's apparently fine.
The show's writers would have to watch the girls' language, too.
And we weren't allowed to say, do it. Did you do it? We weren't allowed to say that. So we said, did you vote-o-do-do? And which made it even more conspicuous than do it.
A society gentleman would only go out with you for one reason. To have a good time, a few laughs, and a little vote-o-do-do. I don't vote-o-do-do. You vote-o-do-do. I don't vote-o-do-do. You vote-o. Once.
A talented supporting cast would help make the show a hit. But it was, after all, really about Laverne and Shirley. And its ultimate success would depend on the chemistry between Cindy Williams and Penny Marshall. Two single working girls chasing men and the American dream. Among sitcoms, it was one of a kind.
Laverne and Shirley was girls' friendship and how poor girls could survive. It was no other show with blue-collar girls on television when Laverne and Shirley appeared.
The chemistry popped. It was a good concept. The optimist and the pessimist, the dreamer and the realist.
We were regular girls who worked for a living and tried to survive. And I think most of America tries to work for a living and survive.
You're out in the world alone. How are you going to support yourself? Are you going to get married? Are you going to fall in love? Is love even available there to you in the world, ever? Everyone thinks those things.
And they were funny. I mean, they genuinely were as funny as anything on television, and totally unique.
By setting the show back in the 50s, its creators could avoid topical 70s issues like race, war, and feminism.
Gary Marshall was much more of a family appeal creator. You know, his show is by and large played at 8 or 8:30. You know, there was kind of an element of fantasy to those shows.
From the moment Laverne and Shirley premiered in January 1976, the characters really connected with the audience.
Make them glad to be bad nighty and matching scanny panties.
The first episode beat its lead-in Happy Days, and the new show continued to top its sister series in the ratings. It soon became obvious that the audience loved Laverne and Shirley and the actresses who played them. Like their characters, Penny and Cindy were different from each other, and they found ways to capitalize on their differences.
You got to write to your talent. My brother used to say, write down what you can do. You know, from baton twirling to Cindy could touch her tongue to her nose. Yeah, we'll fit it in somewhere. So I said, let me drink what I drink, which is milk and Pepsi. Let me at least do that, which I know will get a reaction.
I knew you'd make a try for this, Jack, huh? What is that? Milk and Pepsi. Want a sip?
Just a sip.
It's a heck of a drink. Ever have a Coke float? Same deal. All right? So I knew doing that, so that's me.
Penny was also responsible for Laverne's trademark monogram, the L sewn onto all her sweaters and dresses.
A sweater I tried on had a letter on in wardrobe. I said, they'll say, we'll take it off. I said, no, put an L there. Because in the beginning of a series, you have to say each other's names a million times so the audience gets used to it.
For David Lander and Michael McKean, too, their characters began to gel as the first year progressed.
You know, it wasn't clinical. It was just really how guys talk, as how guys who don't really have a lot of subtlety in them, you know, they're going to go there. It's how they really talk.
Well, I don't know why I'm going. I mean, I ain't love. Love, how many times I got to tell you why you're going? She's got a lonely friend, and you're the best I could do on such short notice.
I thought they would be our dates. But my brother said, no, someone must be dumber than you.
The signature Lenny and Squiggy bit was created during the first show.
The original hello joke was put in because we couldn't figure out why the girls would let them in their apartment. Because the girls locked the door. This is the very first show. And I think the line was, oh, don't worry, Cheryl. You're Prince Charming. They walk right through that door. Hello. And there was Lenny and Squiggy.
I never got to say hello, of course. I was just always the prop that he was dragging in, you know?
David didn't want to say it. He said, who am I saying hello to? Just the room? You know, I mean, you know, actors, you're trying to logically do it. And my brother, would you just say it?
And Gary Marshall said, "It's your trademark. Didn't you hear the audience? They love you. It's your dynamite."
When they applauded and laughed, David went to jelly.
I remember whenever we did those guys, I swear I could feel my IQ like dropping about 40 points to about an 80. Everything was reflex.
Laverne and Shirley was more than funny lines. It was physical comedy in a slapstick style, with its roots in television's golden age.
Well, there was a conscious thing when we started writing it. We knew that they were both great physical comedians, Cindy and Penny. We consciously knew that we were, in a sense, doing Lucy and Ethel. What Lucy and Ethel did best was become victims. When they were victims of circumstance, it was the best.
I think I blew it loose.
You know, if there was an event in the Olympics for comedy, I think we'd take at least the silver.
If Laverne and Shirley were like Lucy and Ethel, Lenny and Squiggy were like Laurel and Hardy.
Hardy is the dumb guy who thinks he's a genius, and Laurel is the genius who thinks he's a dumb guy. So on that turn, I always thought Squiggy is the dumb guy who thinks he's a genius, and Lenny is the dumb guy who thinks Squiggy's a genius. And that's why they stay together.
I loved doing physical stuff. I mean, to me, it was better than anything.
Physical comedy was not highly critically acclaimed. It's very hard to do, and we didn't care because we were #1 in the ratings. So we said, let everybody not want to do physical comedy. This is what we do better than everybody else. And I trained with Lucy for 3 years, so I knew a little bit how to make a woman fall down with humor. That's what we did on Laverne.
They brought those moments that lasted just a few seconds in each episode, but as soon as the audience saw them, they knew what to expect, and they looked forward to it.
If it made us laugh, we knew it made the audience laugh, and that was our goal. Penny and I would turn to each other many times and say, we'll just go for it. And we did.
We were always doing something physical. We were either on roller skates, wrestling, and Tuesday night they'd give it everything they had.
Just fearless. I mean, falling down stairs, falling off ladders, trampoline work.
And I, like a jerk, I'm the director, I'm standing there laughing out loud, you know, too dumb to yell cut.
The doubleheader of Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley was a ratings winner, a scheduling strategy that helped lift ABC to the top.
The shows almost instantly became #1 and #2, you know, in all of television. And at that point, you know, the network was well on its way to establishing not only dominance on Tuesday night, but dominance across the whole schedule.
But with success would come unexpected problems.
Very rarely heard fighting on Happy Days. You heard beating hell out of each other on Laverne and Shirley.
As Laverne and Shirley soared in the ratings, the cast took advantage of their new fame. Like many TV stars of the 70s, Penny, Cindy, Michael, and David diversified, becoming singers too. They even released their own albums.
Cindy took it very seriously. I knew I couldn't sing, so I just think try everything. You know, how often do you get them asked to be make a record? Ha ha! We can't sing. Let's do it.
The girls even got to perform their songs, or at least lip-sync them, in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It was during that trip down Broadway that they realized they were famous.
We're going down in the parade, and they got the barricades and the cops and the people. Well, as we were coming down, not only were the people coming, but the cops were coming. So we were blue-collar workers, so those were our fans. And I mean, we were stunned. We had no idea about the success.
This was before cable was really omnipresent. I always thought that we got recognized in cities where they had better reception. Because they'd see us in person, they go, oh, I know you, but only if they got the station well.
But fame always comes at a price. Behind the scenes, Laverne and Shirley wasn't all fun and games. Co-creator Lowell Gantz had been a writer on Happy Days.
To go from Happy Days to Laverne and Shirley, you really felt like you should have a decompression chamber, you know, or you get those bubbles in your, whatever that's called, the bends. That was a feisty show.
And when you go into Gary's office and you see all these plaques and posters of his movies and of Happy Days and Happy Days and Happy Days. But where's the Laverne and Shirley stuff? I think Laverne and Shirley took its toll on him. After a while, he wouldn't even show up anymore.
Happy Days was a no-worry show. Laverne and Shirley, on the other hand, was nothing but aggravation from the day we put it on the air.
It was very volatile. They were the anti-Happy Days.
Lowell Gantz said, working on Laverne and Shirley with directing, he did his first directorial debut. It was like losing your virginity to a mean lady. That's what he said.
One reason for the difference, the personalities of its 4 stars.
With David and myself and Penny and Cindy, you had 4 pretty big egos with 4 different attitudes towards their, you know, their personal space.
It was an asylum, and I was there to see if I couldn't calm the patients down just a hair.
The cast realized how different they were from their sister series, Happy Days.
We used to think of them as the Stepford actors, because they were always happy. They would come in, they would do the same kind of rehearsal we had, only they'd get out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd leave, they'd buy a car, come back the next day, they were happy. Then they would come back the next day, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they would finish, go, buy a house, they were happy. We would be there till 1 in the morning and basically deciding maybe we should just junk this script completely and start all over again.
Penny, Cindy, and their fellow cast members were writers themselves. They had created the characters and had written their own material, and sometimes they felt they could do a better job than the guys who were writing the scripts.
Our litmus paper was ourselves. We had all written, and we were all performers. You know, we hit the stage, and if something didn't work, we'd just change it on its feet.
You'd read something and go, wait a minute, who wrote this? This guy came from Welcome Back, Kotter? Well, this is the Sweat Hog line. I don't want this. Give it back to the Sweat Hogs.
We wanted it better. And sometimes we didn't do it so nicely.
David once drop-kicked a script into the catwalks. You know, it was an amazing, you know, athletic feat.
We had this script supervisor. She was the go-between between the cast and the writers. So about twice a day, Boderig and my assistant would say, Lowell, it's Gabrielle from the stage. And this freeze would come over the writers. And she'd go, well, I think your presence down here would be very helpful right now. And I just hang up the phone and I go, you know, there was a battle.
Michael and I always felt we've got to do this for the boys, meaning Lenny and Squiggy. We've got to protect them. We've got to make sure that they're still those 2 guys we did at college.
And soon it wasn't just the writers who were targeted. The conflicts went beyond creative differences and started to get personal. As stories began to filter out from the closed confines of the set, the press had a field day, hinting at jealousy and competition between the show's 2 main stars.
They were prima donnas, certainly, I think, out of the fact that they didn't know, you know, they were told they were a big hit. So now I don't have to come out of my dressing room until I'm good and ready.
I call it freshman year of fame. You know, everything is out of proportion. Will they like me? What do I do to make them like me? What was I doing that they like? And so you become a jerk. And it's the freshman year of fame.
For network executives, the show's internal problems were cause for major concern.
You know, the 2 girls, I don't believe got along that well. You know, they were very competitive in terms of the number of lines and jokes that each of them had, and it was, I think Laverne and Shirley turned Gary Marshall prematurely gray.
Penny and Cindy, in many ways, they just loved each other and got along great, had fantastic chemistry.
Please shut up, huh? Come on, make me. All right.
We complimented each other. It's just when you get paranoid that you think, you know, I think she's cute or she's got dimples. You know, and she's saying, well, she's funny or she gets to do that. You know, what do you want to do? I'll come up with another bit. But that's just normal. You know, I've been on other shows, believe me. It just didn't get publicized like this one did.
Cindy was understandably alert. Penny's brother was the boss of the show. Penny's father was one of the producers of the show. I sound like I'm related to her, because I'm from the Bronx also. So she heard that, you know, the head writers seemed to, you know, well, probably I think she suspected that we were marshals who had changed our names to not give ourselves away. And I think she was a little tension about that.
I mean, it was a great adventure. You know, from Tuesday to Tuesday, we all prayed in the East that they would deliver a tape.
Disagreed on something, for goodness sake, you know? You're allowed to. It's called creativity.
Isn't it nice?
Yeah, it's all right. They gave us little hats.
We didn't have a rivalry. I fought for Cindy to play the part. I needed someone next to me that was strong, and Cindy was a terrific actress and is a terrific actress.
In spite of the problems behind the scenes, they managed to get the show on the air week after week.
Tuesday night, they were one person. They were absolutely one person. And there were times in rehearsal and showtime that I heard them help each other. So I never found anything but a respect.
But Laverne and Shirley would get no respect from the critics, who pummeled the show every chance they got.
I think that basically critics are snobs. And, you know, they'll never give a show like Laverne and Shirley credit. You know, with Laverne and Shirley averaging a 55 share, and to put that in some perspective, Seinfeld at its peak, I think it hit about a 31 or a 32. So this is almost double. So, you know, the critics be damned.
I think because it was a slapstick knockabout comedy, which I happen to adore, is not what the Emmy people like. You know, Mad About You is their cup of tea. You know, I use that as a nightlight.
Bad reviews can be ignored as long as your show is doing well in the ratings. But after 5 years on the air, Laverne and Shirley was slipping. Executives decided the show was in need of a major change, so they ordered one. The girls would pack up and move. The 6th season of Laverne and Shirley began in 1980 in a new setting, with the characters moving from Milwaukee to Hollywood. According to the script, the girls were looking to break into the movies, but the real reason behind the move was ratings.
I don't know how many years we were #1, but it's hard to stay up there, you know? And as soon as because you've been #1 for so long, the slightest adjustment, you say, you panic. Wait, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I think they thought moving to LA would help. And then once you made the choice, it's hard to move back.
They wanted him to go to LA and, you know, meet a lot of movie stars and get involved with starlets and stuntmen and do a lot of La Brea tar pit jokes and you know, just do LA.
In Hollywood, Laverne and Shirley were no longer brewery workers, but aspiring movie stars. Like most novice actresses, they made ends meet by taking on temporary jobs, providing more opportunities for funny business. Along with the change of scene, new characters were introduced. Rhonda, another aspiring actress, and Sonny St. Jacques, a stuntman. But most of the cast thought the move to Hollywood was a terrible idea.
I thought that it played great, just being middle America, no bells and whistles of Hollywood, no earthquakes, no, you know, Hollywood stars and things like that. But I was not the boss on that one.
What's more, the bosses didn't just move Laverne and Shirley. Their friends and family went with them. Laverne's father, Frank DeFazio, and landlady Edna Babish tied the knot and opened up a restaurant called Cowboy Bob's.
It was a little bit odd that the entire population of Milwaukee moved with the girls when they decided to go. But hey.
Laverne and Shirley, the former Milwaukee bottle cappers, didn't adjust easily to the West Coast.
The blue-collar workers are not working as much in sunny California, as far as I'm concerned.
The audience wasn't impressed with the changes either. By the end of the season, the show was still only ranked 29th in the ratings. But the biggest shock was yet to come.
Well, I got married and got pregnant, and it was just time. My priorities started changing.
With a baby on the way, Cindy wanted to be protected from the physical demands of production.
She wanted her hours in writing, and I said, well, I said, look, if you're tired, go home. Why should I have it in writing that you have to stay 8 hours, you know, if you're tired. Plus, all I cared is that she could lie in bed the whole time.
But in the end, Cindy and the show's executives couldn't come to an agreement. She would leave the series. The writers came up with a standard exit scenario.
Cindy was pregnant, so they wrote in a husband whom we never saw. We saw one time swathed in bandages. Mr. Meany, his name was, who she became Shirley Feeney Meany.
But some people didn't like it, you know. It's like, oh, where did this come from? But I think they had, because she was leaving the show, they had to figure out a way to get her off and get her out.
It was clear that her exit would spell disaster for the show.
There's more to life than show business, you know, so I think she should have a kid and be happy, and let's stop the show. So that's what it is.
It's one thing to have a character leave a series. It happens all the time. It's quite another thing to have half of the title leave. Laverne and Shirley was now really just Laverne, and it was immediately clear that the series was living on borrowed time.
But I don't want to go on. We had done enough. I signed on to do the show with Cindy, that's it.
The balance was missing. It was now an all Laverne show. I think Penny wasn't happy with it either, you know. She didn't want them to change the title to The Laverne Show. It still said Laverne and Shirley.
It was a two-person show. I said, we got enough, let's stop.
But the show would continue, even though its comic heart was gone.
There were some times when David and I felt like David called us the amyl nitrate twins, because when the show when a scene didn't have a punchline, we would just kind of be wheeled in for a sight gag and then wheeled out again, you know. And sometimes that kind of monotony got to us.
Soon, Michael McKean made his own exit, leaving to co-star in a mock documentary about a fictional rock band called Spinal Tap. Old friend Rob Reiner directed, and Michael's fellow band members were Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer, a former writer on Laverne and Shirley. It would become a cult classic. But meanwhile, back on the show, Lenny and Squiggy became simply Squiggy.
I understood why Michael left. It wasn't, you know, I didn't take it personally or anything. But it wasn't like suddenly they gave me another actor to work with. Well, he'll be your Lenny tonight, you know. It was nothing like that.
With the breakup of the two comic duos that were central to the show's success, it was only a matter of time before the end.
It felt like we were just playing out the string, you know. It really was, here I am at work. I don't know. You know, the passion was gone. I think even if Michael had stayed, the passion probably would have been gone. It was, I think Michael and I were both frustrated that there was so much Lenny and Squiggy stuff we never got to do.
The ratings plummeted, and the competition was crippling. There was only one thing left to do: cancel the show. And that is exactly what ABC did.
There's an old axiom, which is every successful show is on the air 1 year longer than it should be.
By the spring of 1983, the handwriting was on the wall for Laverne and Shirley. With the departure of Cindy Williams and Michael McKean, the two comic duos were split, and the ratings continued to drop.
So it wasn't like somebody came and said, well, you've been canceled. It was just, I think we more or less canceled it ourselves. They said, well, we don't want to come back next year.
On May 10th, 1983, the final episode of Laverne and Shirley aired.
Laverne and Shirley, I thought, did not run its natural course. There were so many changes of personnel behind the camera. The writing staffs and the producers and executive producers and supervising producers changed so often on that show that I thought the show did not really die a natural death.
With the series over, Penny Marshall's career took a new turn. she became a successful film director, crafting such hits as Big, Jumpin' Jack Flash, and A League of Their Own.
And I always thought that Penny would be a good director because she seemed to think like a director. She saw the show as a whole. She saw what everybody was doing. And if Penny gave me a note on the way I played Squiggy, I would take it very seriously because she knew what made Squiggy funny, and she knew what made Lenny funny, and she knew she had a real good concept of it all.
In a feature film world dominated by men, Penny would have to prove herself all over again. And she did.
When I first started, I was Gary's sister, Rob Reiner's wife, Carl Reiner's daughter-in-law, so I could just go in with credits of who I'm related to down my chest. And I do, whoever they wanted. You're Gary's sister? Yeah, I'm Gary's sister.
Penny was Gary's sister for a long time, and now I'm Penny's brother, so it evened out.
After starting her family, Cindy Williams returned to acting in films, TV, and on stage. She also co-produced the 2 successful Father of the Bride movies.
Isn't she terrific?
Eddie Mecca would also continue to work in television and theater. He even reunited with Cindy in a recent Las Vegas revival of Grease. Betty Garrett has maintained a busy schedule of TV appearances and recently starred on Broadway in a revival of the Stephen Sondheim musical, Follies. Phil Foster died in 1985, just 2 years after Laverne and Shirley went off the air. The movie, This Is Spinal Tap, elevated Michael McKean and his character David St. Hubbins to cult status. When he wasn't playing guitar, Michael acted and wrote for TV series like Tracy Takes On, Dream On, The X-Files, and Saturday Night Live, where he was a regular for a season. He also starred in feature films, including the hit Best in Show. For the other half of Lenny and Squiggy, there was a different set of challenges ahead. In 1984, David Lander was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
About a year after Laverne and Shirley, I just started noticing things I couldn't do that made no sense as to why I couldn't do it, like walking across the street seemed difficult. Running was totally out of the question. And I was falling down more than I was used to. So that's when I went and saw a doctor, and they gave me a spinal tap, an MRI, and said, we know you have multiple sclerosis, and you'll probably be in a wheelchair within a year. So I thought my whole life was over. It was kind of a dark time in my life.
After hearing the doctor's bleak prognosis, David kept his condition a secret, afraid that it would prevent him from getting work. But in 1999, David decided to come out, determined to win the fight against MS.
When I announced that I have multiple sclerosis, I mean, the outpouring of people was amazing. And it's like, well, gee, if he's got it, that means Squiggy's got it, you know? And you say, God, they really do care about you. They really not just watch that show, they see you as someone they grew up with. I know one time somebody said, I have multiple sclerosis, and now that I know that you've got it, it doesn't seem so bad. And I'm like, okay, fine. Let that be something I do for you.
Since then, David has continued working in television and movies. But he and Michael will always be remembered best for their comic creations, Lenny and Squiggy.
And I think we like to think of those guys as being eternally, well, maybe 29 tops. So we like doing them vocally. We like to find a way to do Lenny and Squiggy and, in some other format other than, visually us standing there with our thinning pompadours. Because they still make us laugh, and it's kind of my second state. Unfortunately, this is my first. And this is what has to ask for the bank loans.
Now we do them, they're older. So Lenny and Squiggy having a midlife crisis can be very funny.
As for the TV series they created more than 2 decades ago, Laverne and Shirley has become an American pop icon.
Because it was innocent, And I think as time goes on, there's so many problems in the world today. I mean, so much crap going on that you want to escape to something. And now Laverne and Shirley, it was in the period where we had less problems and we had just innocent things where love was simpler and it was very nostalgic. I think that's a good way to go to escape. So as problems get bigger, I think more and more you want to watch Laverne and Shirley.
I look back on Laverne and Shirley like the way I look back at when I used to go to camp as a kid. You know, those are my camp friends, you know.
Can I imagine my life without Shirley Feeney? At this point now, I can. She's very, very precious to me.
Yeah, it's the bizarrest thing. I mean, I'll walk, I'm scouting locations, and the worse the neighborhoods are, the more I'm recognized. I can walk down Madison, no one knows who I am. Other places, yo! And it's 100 years ago. They liked that we were survivors, I think.
Laverne and Shirley continues to be one of America's most beloved sitcoms. In 2003, Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams won TV Land's Viewers' Choice Award for their roles in the famed series. Then in 2004, the duo each received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Even though it's been years since the show ended, new generations of fans are born as the show continues to live on in syndication.